I've come along today to give you a bit of background about the SSSC and to talk you through more about the nitty-gritty on how people get registered and you know what that process is. When I saw the title of today's event, I got a bit worried, your questions answered. I would have preferred it to say most of your questions answered because I don't know that I'm going to be able to cover everything. So I don't know all the answers. I will try to answer everyone's questions, but anything that I can't answer today, I'll certainly take it back and get an answer for you. So first of all, what is the SSSC? Well, we were established under the Regulation of Care Scotland Act 2001. And it was the same legislation that set up the Care Commission. And lots of people are still getting us confused with the Care Commission. And most of the people in here will already know the differences between us and the Care Commission. We're two very separate organisations, but I think because we share the same building with the Care Commission, people get us confused. The Care Commission were set up to regulate and inspect services. Our role is to regulate individual workers. So our relationship is with the individual worker, regardless of which service they're working in. We have equivalent councils in the other 4 countries of the UK, and we're very similar to them, although our requirements are different in terms of registration, and that's about because we're set up under different legislation, so we've got different sets of rules, and there are some differences, but we work very closely with them to have sort of the same policy and the same direction. So our policy objectives are to strengthen and support the professionalism of the workforce, to protect those who use our services, so that's about the registration of people who are working with service users, to raise standards of practice, and in doing so, to raise public confidence in the workforce. So we've got a better workforce, and the public are far more confident in the service that they're receiving. Our main tasks are to publish codes of practice for all social service workers and their employers. Now, it's estimated that there are 138,000 social service workers in Scotland, and for us to register 138,000 workers is quite a task, given that we've only got around 13,000 on the register at the moment. So I think our workforce in terms of the SSSC is going to grow. But it is estimated that there's 138,000 workers, and I'll talk about the phasing in of that process shortly. But we've issued codes of practice or we've issued over 500,000 codes of practice, so they're probably sitting in cupboards somewhere, but I'm not sure. But I think we're assured that most workers and employers have got a copy of the codes of practice. The key task to register key groups of social service workers, which I'm going to talk about today, to regulate the workforce and its education and training, and to contribute to workforce planning development of qualifications and promotion of education and training. So going back to the code of practice then, we are the only regulatory body, or we are the first regulatory body to have a code of practice for employers as well as a code of practice for the workers. Other regulatory bodies like the NMC will have a code of practice for the workers, but there's no code of practice, or there wasn't a code of practice for the employers. It was felt that the conduct and competence of a worker was strongly influenced by the employer, and that's why there is the code of practice. And you'll see, when you look at both codes of practice, they complement one another. So if there's a code of practice for the worker, there's something in the code of practice for the employer which supports that. So yeah, it focuses on the responsibilities of the employer in relation to registration and regulation. When the executive consulted in 1999, way back, the feedback from the consultation came that people wanted it to be an all-inclusive register, so it wasn't just to be qualified professional social workers, it was to be everyone that's working in social services who have contact with service users. and that it would be a qualification-based register, so that there would be qualification requirements for each part of the register. When I spoke about the 138,000 workers, we couldn't open the register and say, right, every 138,000 of you, please come forward for registration now. I think we would have been buried under a whole stream of application forms. So we put together a timetable for registration and started off with social workers in April 2003. We then opened the register to students on the new degree course, and care commission officers, and so on and so on. The bits in yellow are parts of the register that are not yet open, but there is a timetable for when they will be open. This timetable doesn't include everyone. The Scottish Executive are the people who tell us which part of the register will be open next. So they tell us, then we tell you, and there is a phased approach to registration. How will workers be registered? Now, apart from social workers, if they have a qualification, which is a DIPSWA or an equivalent qualification to the DIPSWA, they can be registered regardless of whatever job they're in. So even if they're taking a career break, they can still be registered. Every other part of the register, apart from students, which is quite different, it's about the function that the individual worker is carrying out. So they have to be in a post that, so if it's, for example, a residential childcare worker, they have to be working in that job before they could be registered with us. It's a requirement. And it's about what you do, not what you're called, because when we consult on the various different parts of the register and about the qualification criteria, and for example, the most recent one was for the daycare of children part of the register. We were asking people what job titles they had, because we considered about having parts of the register broken down into job titles. There's about 78 job titles in daycare of children, so we thought, well, that's not going to work. So we've got a description about what you do, not what your job title is. And what a job title means in one organisation can be completely different to what it means in another organisation. So it's just, that's really important, that it's about the function that workers are carrying out. There is a qualification criteria for each part of the register, and the 3 points in the criteria are that the qualification must have a value base that's consistent with our codes of practice. They must contain knowledge and observed assessed practice and should be consistent with the national occupational standards for the sector. Now that one's really important. We're often asked about people that have maybe worked in a job for 15 years and they don't have a formal qualification. They're asking us about, can that be put forward for registration? Unfortunately, it can't. And it's about being assessed practice. We can't take it on someone's word that they've practiced safely for the last 15 years. And in the majority of cases, that will be correct, but we can't take it on someone's word. It has to be some form of formal assessed practice. And the qualification must be located on the Scottish Credit and Qualification Framework.